right, so our first topic, and this one I can see there's a lot of interest in the room, transitioning to lead-free plumbing in Australia. So there is a 3-year transition period for Queensland. It has started. Commencing from May the 1st, 2026, a regulatory change will render the installation of copper alloy plumbing products containing lead content exceeding 0.25% impermissible in plumbing systems designated for potable water. Now, I think it's fair to say, and we have had a little chat with the panel I have earlier, that this is probably the biggest disruption the plumbing industry has ever witnessed. So we're going to try and help navigate everyone through this transition because I've got an expert lineup of panellists to help us. So let's bring them up one by one. First of all, I've got Anne-Maree Campbell, Manager Watermark at Australian Building Codes Board. Please make her welcome. Then Ernie's coming to join us. Ernie Kretschmer, Deputy Executive Director at Master Plumbers Association of Queensland. Scott Michaels is the President of the Plumbing Products Industry Group. And Tony Hurd is joining us now. Come on, Tony. And he's the CEO at Plumbing Plus. Yes. Okay, I'm going to go off the stage and I will look at my phone to get some of your questions, but you all comfortable there? All right, yep. Let's go. Now, I think this topic could actually run for hours. We've got 55 minutes, just letting you know, okay? So let's get straight to the point. Obviously, this is not a decision that was made overnight, and it's not something that can just happen with the turn of a tap. I said that instead of flick of a switch, because you're not electricians, you're plumbers. So, how is this happening? I'm going to start with Scott.
Well, in 2017, there were some issues in the Perth Children's Hospital. Some testing showed that there was an excessive lead content in the water. And whilst the investigation subsequently proved that the products that had gone into the hospital were not certified, and i.e. not watermarked, it did create a discussion in the community about lead in plumbing. It did create some community concern, and to follow on from that, there was an issue with some bubblers in the Geelong municipality. At the Plumbing Products Industry Group, we took the decision to publish a position paper in May of 2018 because in our mind, Australia is generally reactive to regulation. I think to a certain extent with the challenge of natural disasters, Australia reacts. There's not really a proactive mentality in terms of regulation, and for me, the Children's Hospital changed the landscape and started a conversation, and it was everywhere. It was on talkback radio, it was in the newspapers, lead was happening. So we published our position paper in May of 2018, and the other key industry group of the Australian Industry Group published their position later that year, and it then went to the Building Ministers meeting in 2019, and from there the discussion started, and that's where we find it. The end result is that's where we find ourselves today.
So who's picked that date?
Which date is that?
As in 2026.
I'm going to hand that over to Anne-Maree.
The Australian Building Codes Board, who write the National Construction Code, which includes Volume 3, the Plumbing Code of Australia, they've decided that that's when the states and territories will implement this from 1 May 2026.
Okay, so
across the country.
Because they believed in 3 years you could have everything sorted and this move would be very smooth?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, you didn't sound very confident when you said that, Anne-Maree.
They're the timeframes that they've decided. They didn't want to have this lagging.
Okay, all right. So can we get some thoughts up there on this? It is very disruptive. Would you say it's the biggest disruption to the plumbing industry?
Oh, by far. It's the biggest change that we've seen in the plumbing industry, and hopefully we don't have another one like this in a short period of time. So we've got a lot of work to do from a reseller perspective. We're right at the pointy end. So we're the ones holding the baby at the end of the day to ensure that we've got the product in a fit for purpose to meet those standards in that 3-year time frame. So it's very tight. It's very difficult to actually get alignment right across the whole supply chain. When you think about where we're sourcing product from, predominantly it's coming out of China. China doesn't like to change. They like to have a set and forget. They like to have long production runs. They like to have that productivity through the plant and to let it go, and they don't like changing it. And there's been a lot of change to actually try and make this lead-free release agent work in those plants. So from our perspective, it's all about timing, it's all about capacity, it's all about capability, and it's all about cost. So, you know, cost is something that, you know, initially suppliers were hitting us with large cost increases. Yes, we can do lead-free, but it's going to cost you another 30%. And we just can't afford to bring that into the industry and pass it on to our customers. So we've been working hard with our supply chain to ensure that the product will meet the regulatory timeframe of 2026. We're not quite sure how we come up with that date. There's been a lot of work being done on our side of it for the last 12 months to ensure that we do hit those dates, but we've got a long way to go, Lee.
All right, so is the water we're drinking now really not safe? You can jump down my throat.
It's safe, but we're making it safer in line with what's happening internationally with regard to lead in plumbing products. So there's not any level of lead that is acceptable. So we're trying to reduce it from what it currently is down to make it even more safe.
So can you please explain, like following overseas, what is overseas? What's happening?
So this change started in California, and from there the regulation became national. The regulation in the United States is 0.25. The change is not about dealing with an issue, it's an enhancement. So internationally, if Australia had tried to do this on their own to start with, it would have been impossible. But the benchmark is there. The United States has demonstrated it can be done, and that's what gave the impetus to make the change, because there was a benchmark for it to occur. And there's been a lot of work has happened between key stakeholders of industry, the Watermark team at the Australian Building Codes Board, and conformance assessment bodies to work together to work out the transition. It was never going to be an easy change, and those that think it could have been, it's not perfect, but a lot of work's been done to bring about the change in a timely manner, but also to acknowledge that it does take a great deal of time. But before the transition dates started, a lot of work was occurring in terms of working out how the transition should occur.
Okay, and what about the stock that people have got now? Like, what happens with that?
So at the moment, the products that are in the market are compliant and they're suitable for installation and they're authorised for installation. So up until that date, all existing products will be able to be used, and then what we expect is that market will gradually sell that down and introduce the lead-free product so that that's all ready to go by 1 May 2026.
Ernie, you're not saying much there. Can you speak on behalf of MPAQ, like your thoughts?
I think Anne-Maree just stole my question.
Oh.
No, it is something to keep in mind if you've got product in your business, in your vans.
Nice and high, so we can hear you. Yep. Keep talking. That doesn't mean stop.
If you've got product in your business that you haven't used by that date and it's not lead-free, you won't be able to use it. You won't be able to install it. That's the point.
Okay, so steps of transitioning, like it's not just you've got to, obviously, the product has got to change. What about training? You know, there's a lot involved in all of this, and I guess even right down to the consumer. We have to know why and what's going on, and you know, you tell us that it's going to be a more effective solution, even though it's safe now, and I think I spoke about this in the last session. We panic when we hear anything that, you know, oh, we're not doing this anymore, it's got to go this way. We go, oh, and then we just go crazy. So how's all this being handled?
So the ABCB is raising awareness both of Watermark generally, but also Watermark lead-free. At the moment, we're focusing the lead-free awareness initiatives on industry. So that's on the building practitioners and the plumbing practitioners. building practitioners, particularly because they're often the ones that are making decisions or helping clients to choose which products they're going to install, or they could be supplying products to site for installers to install. So we're trying to raise awareness through the building sector as well as the plumbing sector. And then we're also working with the retail sector, and we've got a lot more work to do in that space now to help them understand the requirements and transition over. So that involves staff training, what they need to know in store, and all of that. So we'll leave raising awareness with consumers to right at the end, because what we want to ensure happens is that the existing stock that is suitable for use is utilised, and we don't want to rush on product that won't be available in the market ahead of when it will be available. So that's our game plan in terms of raising awareness, and we're doing that through our stakeholder representatives in industry and through the regulators, and they feed the information that we provide out through their stakeholders. So membership of, say, Master Plumbers, Plumbing Products Industry Group, working with the retailer sector, and just getting the information out there, especially through the plumbing regulators as well, and the building regulators. And then there'll be advertising over the top, which is more focused on consumers. But at the moment, that advertising will be just for Watermark, and later on it'll be Watermark lead-free.
So is there a specific group that are working together to I guess, organise this transition? No? Or you're all just doing it individually?
I think from a reseller perspective, we're trying to move as quick as we can, lead, and trying to ensure that the product has got the lead-free markings on it. We'd like to think by the end of the year we'll have maybe 80% of our product that's applicable to lead-free will be changed over. But it's a progressive area with our suppliers to ensure that they are there. Hopefully by the end of the year we'll have the majority of that product changed in our supply chain, and then will give us 18 months to move that through and have a fully compliant product in that process.
So Ernie, what feedback are you getting from plumbers?
Not a lot. At the moment, there's not a lot of industry awareness about the changes yet. That will obviously come out through ABCB and various other channels, which we will help share.
Well, why don't we get some feedback? Anyone here got questions they'd like to ask? I thought you would, Bill. All right. Never let me down, do you?
A half-inch hex nipple, for example. How are you going to be able to say that that's lead-free? I mean, all of us have got brass fittings in our trucks or our vans, and how is the plumbing inspector? Is he going to police that? I mean, I know we're supposed to do the right thing, but how are you going to know that half-inch brass hex nipple is lead-free? And the other thing, just as a little aside to that, I replaced 10,000 water meters in Brisbane City Council when they replaced the water services and put in water meters. I've got to tell you that just 90% of the connections, this is in south side of Brisbane, just about every connection was in lead, from the main to the actual stopcock was all in lead. And the ones that went across the road were a gal pipe with a lead fitting on one end and lead pipe. We weren't allowed to tell the homeowner that they were drinking lead water for all these years, but that's what they were doing. And and so, I mean, I'm happy to go with it, and I know some of my people that I talk to, manufacturers and that, they're already there. They've got their lead free already, so they're all working towards it. But I just worry, as I said before, what happens with the hex nipples in the back of your truck.
So with your hex nipple, how do you tell if your product's watermarked currently?
You just assume when you buy it from...
No, you can't just assume your product's watermarked.
Say that Trading's selling unwatermarked products, or Plumbing Plus is, or any of these reputable retailers.
So, and I'm stealing Anne-Maree's question now. For a product to be sold, it has to hold the watermark, and it has to display the symbol. So your hex nipple has to have a little W on it. Now, when it's lead-free, it will have a lead-free watermark symbol on it. So you'll be able to identify that.
So we've got a half-inch hex nipple that's long. We're not going to make it this long, are we, to fit it all on?
If it doesn't fit on the product, it has to be on the packaging, correct?
Comes in a plastic bag.
With a W on it. It has to.
He's not happy. He's not happy, Ernie. No, not happy with you at all. Okay. Anyone else got a question? Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're going, Krishna. Thank you.
Yeah, g'day guys, Warwick here. I just wanted to ask a question around the Watermark's position on, we've got a lot of imports, we've got a lot of things coming through onto the market, not through reputable retailers as far as we can tell, but there's got to be something done around the consumer, it's specifically in the education, because it's all good and well for us to, like, you know, Bernie said, we're going to try and do the right thing, but it's not us that's installing all of these things. There's a lot of this stuff happening outside of our knowledge, and I just want to know how are you going to reach the consumer, because at the end of the day, the fear in the consumer is the thing that will change the situation, not the plumbers, to be honest.
Thanks for the question. So we are raising awareness with consumers about Watermark and the need for products to be certified, and the need for plumbing work to be done by licensed practitioners, and explaining to them what the watermark means, what it looks like, and to check on the database. And that information is being done through advertising, and also then similar information is being rolled out, as we said, through our representatives both in the regulatory and industry space, and there'll be more of that to come. And then eventually we'll get to talking about lead-free, but as I said, we'll do that later. In terms of enforcement, it's really up to the regulators in each state and territory to ensure that products being installed are Watermark certified, and we're trying to get that information out through the whole supply chain, as I said, so that those that are guiding consumers, whether they're in store or whether it's a designer or their installer, it has the information to make sure that they're choosing Watermark certified product.
And just to add to that, if you're in Queensland here and you have a non-watermark product being sold or installed, QBCC, so in 2016, the non-conforming building, 2016, non-conforming building products? 2018, legislation was introduced to capture non-conforming building products, not just plumbing products, but building products as a whole. But specifically, if we're talking about plumbing products, if you come across something online that's being sold, or something in a shop that's being sold and it's not watermarked and it's intended to be put into a plumbing system, it's your responsibility to report it to the QBCC.
Thank you.
Scott, you want to say something?
Warwick, we probably don't have an answer that's acceptable for you, because at the end of the day, there is a loophole in the plumbing industry. And the plumbing industry in Australia is really fortunate, because we are the only industry within the construction sector that has a mandatory certification scheme. And I can tell you, when I go to meetings with other construction associations, they look upon plumbing with complete envy, because we are the only ones that are on mandatory certification scheme. So from a construction perspective, plumbing is way in front of all other sectors in Australia in construction. But does that mean it's working perfectly? No, it's not. And the loophole that exists is that it is illegal to install a non-watermark product in Australia, but not illegal to sell it. And that's why the Plumbing Products Industry Group is advocating with the state regulators to adopt point-of-sale legislation. And we don't think that it's right that the people installing the product bear all the risk, and it should be the supply chain. And that's not an answer for you today, but that's what we're advocating on.
Actually, and Queensland's kind of the envy of the rest of the country, because as a byproduct of the non-conforming building products legislation, we kind of have point-of-sale legislation. So one step further, a merchant in Queensland can't sell a non-watermark product to a plumber to install into a plumbing system, because everyone in that supply chain is responsible. So the merchant gets in trouble, I get in trouble for installing it, and it goes up the line. So Queensland, you do have that protection.
That's excellent, and it does answer the majority of my question, and I've seen the change over the years. You know, even at Bunnings, there's posts saying, hey, you can't install that. But I believe that the suppliers, and the manufacturers in particular, have a responsibility with their products to say, hey, this has to be installed by a licensed plumber, great. But also there's got to be some sort of follow-up for the consumer. Currently we wear the risk, for Form 4s and all these types of situations when we're installing these things, but there's got to be a way to tie it back into the consumer for warranty and for insurance purposes and safety and that sort of stuff. There's no lead there to manage that, and that's why it's so important that we get in front of the consumer, not just in a advertising. People know that Watermark exists. Do they follow and conform by it? No. Awareness is not going to be enough to actually get to that point where it's dangerous, and I understand the fear factor around that. We don't want to upset the market. We don't want to scare people into these sorts of things, but the fact of the matter is people need to be more aware in general, and I like the idea. So you did answer my question, thank you.
But what happens in 2026 when rules are changed and the consumers go, well, hang on, I've got a lot of the older stuff, so I want it all changed. So you don't have enough plumbers to service if everyone goes into this sort of panic mode. Or do you? Do you know what I'm talking about? Or is it only work moving forward they have to do it? So you say that, okay, I understand that, but the general public are going to go, well, hang on, my pipes aren't lead-free and I want them to be lead-free because obviously there's going to be some awareness out there for the consumers. So what happens then is what I'm saying.
I guess that'll come down to awareness raising. So most changes to the code are not retrospective. They're for new building work. But what that means with plumbing products in particular, there's a lot of replacement work being done as products wear out or fashions change. People are updating their kitchens, bathrooms, laundries all the time. So when they go to do that replacement work, they'll be installing lead-free product then.
Yeah.
And as repairs are done, the same thing. So it will be part of just that general awareness and it's also about practitioners and the whole industry understanding that it's not retrospective and providing that uniform message to their clients when they're speaking with them.
Okay. All right. Now I do have another question here. How many products are currently lead-free?
8,808.
Okay. So how many are not?
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. How will plumbers be able to identify that a product is lead-free? Well, you've sort of mentioned that, haven't you, with the new Watermark. Anyone else? Okay.
Thanks, Lee. I'm just wondering if the utilities are under the same duress to change everything they've got and upgrade, or has anyone done any research to figure out that it's not the contamination at the supply point rather than the usage point? And is there anything going to be done about the urban utilities and the rest of them to upgrade their water supply infrastructure to make sure that it's not prior to the distribution to the domestic market?
A very high percentage of the copper alloy products used by the utilities are already watermarked, so they will fall under the jurisdiction of this change.
And well, to add to that as well, in Queensland at least, the service providers don't fall under our legislation. So our legislation says you can't install anything unless it's an approved product or a watermark product. They don't fall under the Plumbing and Drainage Act.
Sorry, did they check the water quality upstream before they started pointing the finger at the downstream people?
Just to be clear, the changes to the code apply to on-site plumbing and drainage work, so from the network utility operator's point of connection to the point of discharge in buildings. So we can't really speak to what the network utility operators are doing, but as Scott said, by the default of us using products in common, because our products will be required to be lead-free watermarked, where they use those products, they will be likely the only ones they can find.
But surely it makes sense to check the source before the usage point to make sure that what's coming down the transmission main is good quality and lead-free.
Well, the utilities are doing their own testing.
Right. Gee, it's gone quiet. Okay. Any other questions? Come on, you're all thinking. Yeah. Just over there, Krishna.
Probably a question for Scott in terms of the testing of the lead content in the water when we're talking about the Children's Hospital. Wasn't it found that it was actually born from the utility, not from the products in the hospital?
I think it was both. The products were found, the products involved in the relevant part of the hospital where there was the greatest issue were found to be non-watermarked. So it was discounted that there was a problem with lead leaching per se with the products themselves. They couldn't, because the products were non-watermarked, they'd never been through any product testing, they hadn't passed 40-20. So in addition to some of the water quality issues within the hospital, it was found that was the brassware was a contributing factor.
Okay, thanks.
Will the ABC be doing a review on the watermark scheme?
So the scheme is currently under review at the moment. We've started with a high-level review. So the last review was in 2013-14, shortly after the scheme transferred to the ABCB, and we're currently going through another review. At the moment, there's a high-level review being done to set the scope of what the detailed review will be. So in the next financial year, you can expect there to be engagement with stakeholders about how they're feeling about the scheme, the good, bad and the ugly, plenty of opportunities to provide comment on what's working well and what isn't, and what your expectations are for the scheme, and all manner of questions. So the scope hasn't been set, but I expect it to be fairly broad.
Okay, and what products are covered under the lead in plumbing scheme?
So the products that are required to comply are copper alloy products that are in contact with drinking water, that are conveying drinking water. So within that broad category, there are some exclusions where there's no real benefit for the product to be lead-free, but largely we're talking about taps, valves. That's the largest category. Fittings, anything that's a copper alloy product. Products that are inherently lead-free, so plastic products, stainless steel products, can still be certified lead-free if they want to be, but they're not required to be certified lead-free.
Anyone else want to add to that? No? Okay. Questions?
Just a quick one on that. Obviously, for years, PVC had a lead stabiliser. Now, we've got over that. We've got different stabiliser in PVC, but with a lot of this imported product, is it just going to be the copper alloy products, or should it not be right across the plumbing fittings and pipework systems?
So the requirement in the code is just for copper alloy products, and the products required will be listed on the watermark schedule of products specifically, and any exclusions. Products that are made of other materials still need to be watermark certified and still need to comply with the current requirements for lead that are in the code. So there are requirements at the moment. We're just refining those requirements. Is that a fair response? Anyone? Yeah.
Matthew, there was a risk-based approach taken. So it was identified that the greatest risk were products containing copper alloys. It's been a different approach than what's happened in the US, where everything in the US has to demonstrate lead-free compliance. But in Australia, the decision was taken that if a risk-based approach was applied, these were the products to apply that approach to.
Mm-hmm. What will be the biggest challenge for manufacturers to comply with this regulation?
How long have you got? For those manufacturers in the room, would all agree that this is a really challenging change. It's not like flicking a switch or changing an ingredient in a recipe. The lead-free alloys are immensely more challenging to work with. Australia has the additional requirement of, though we can only use lead-free alloys that are resistant to dezigification. The alloys are difficult to machine. When you machine the products, they take longer to machine. They're harder on the tools. they've got to be machined at a slower pace, and often you start manufacturing products, sometimes you've actually got to test how they're working in the machining section. Some have forging challenges, and not so much in terms of the product performance, but the cost impost is coming from the longer manufacturing process. So for many manufacturers, it's trial and error, but also you've got different volume requirements for purchasing the raw material because the volume used in these alloys is lower than what's currently being used. So it's a very challenging period for manufacturers, and this is the greatest regulatory change we've seen in the plumbing industry. Whilst there was a big focus on the decision to make this change, at the end of the day, the decision, do we want to reduce the lead content in these products? And the answer is yes. Delivering more enhanced outcomes, but that doesn't mean the process is not immensely challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you want to say something, Ernie? You looked like no. Okay, I thought you were keen for something there.
So, Lee, I'll jump in there as well.
Yeah, please.
One of our biggest challenges we face is the slow-moving product that we've got in our supply chain as well, and making sure that our full product offer is there ready for the 2026 deadline. And Bill, you talked about the half-inch nipple, the quarter-inch nipple. They're the ones that does worry us. Talking to manufacturers right now, they have got the release agents and the alloys right. They are manufacturing some product right now. And they're telling us to try and reassure us that they're moving on those fast-moving lines and they're getting on top of the product. It's not the fast-moving lines I'm concerned about. It's the slow-moving lines. It's the quarter-inch brass nipple that I'm concerned that's not going to get picked up. That could actually wreck your whole job going forward. So, from a reseller's perspective, we have to pick up our product codes and put an LF or some sort of identifier there in our network, so we know when we're picking that stock, it's the right stock that's going out, and to ensure that we can we're picking the right product that's got lead-free on that due date. So there's a lot of internal requirements for us from a reseller perspective to get that right and hit the ground running.
Yeah. Anyone else? Because just hypothetically, I know I'm blonde, I'm not in the plumbing industry. Hypothetically, I don't even know what a nipple is, but if they're not manufactured in time and the date happens, what happens? If the manufacturer goes, look, this machine has just died, I don't know, let's just, anything is possible after COVID, so just ride with me on this. It hasn't happened and we can't pump them out, so sorry, what happens?
We anticipate we're going to have some rock stone to appear at the end of the year. Lots of suppliers have said to us, told us, reassured us, give us the confidence that they've got this under control. And we'll find out later on in the year where there's exposure. That will then trigger our need to actually go and find alternatives.
Right.
So we're trying to keep our options open. We're seeking alternatives. The problem that we've got in this market is it's actually quite a small market. It's when you're sourcing out of a big beast like China, we're fairly bespoke in our requirements, and so it's not that easy just to go and pick up and find an alternative with this sort of requirement to it. So, we've got time still, but it's still a long road in front of us, and there's still a lot more work to do.
Oh, okay. What is happening in New Zealand? Are they also requiring their products to be lead-free? Will New Zealand become a dumping ground for products that aren't lead-free?
New Zealand is following suit. In fact, they're going ahead of us now because we provided an extension of time. They'll require products to be lead-free certified from 1 September 2025. So they've stuck with the original date because it was too difficult for them to move to give that extension to 1 May 2026. So in New Zealand, they don't mandate watermark. They accept watermark and they accept other certifications, which is different to Australia, which means that they'll accept products that are lead-free or certified to the same requirements in other jurisdictions without them having to go through the watermark process.
There's some risk involved with that, though, isn't there?
Well, that's what they've always done. So they're happy and comfortable with that. That means that product that is acceptable in Northern America, in Europe, will likely be accepted in New Zealand as well.
Okay.
And I think that will help them, particularly as they're going in earlier than we are.
Right. Okay. What will happen if a high-rise building is built on the Gold Coast, say between 2025 and 2026, and products are being installed that aren't lead-free? Who will be checking the products are lead-free?
So responsibility for compliance with the National Construction Code, so that's the installation, and the products, which is Watermark, is undertaken by the state and territory regulators. So they will decide how they're going to handle buildings that transition over the that time frame of before and after the transition date. How all of this is enforced is completely up to the state and territory regulators.
Yeah, and to add to that, local government will handle the inspection regime as they do now. From 1 May, you should be using the new product. Before that, if the old product's gone in, that's fine. If 1 May hits on level 12, or from level 12 on, you're lead-free.
Wow. Anyone else?
How much lead's in our fittings now?
How much lead is in our fittings now?
Between 2 to 4%. Lee, one of the important points to note about the use of the LF with the watermark, one of the reasons why there was a delay is that we wanted the transition round table wanted to create some legal protection to stop any manufacturer just putting the words LF on the valve or on the fitting or on the backflow prevention device. So to have it consistent for practitioners, inspectors, regulators, retailers, the LF is appearing alongside the watermark logo. That has been trademarked, so there is some legal protection to stop anyone just saying, "Oh, I can put the LF wherever I like." It's got to be it's got to be adjacent to the right of the watermark, and that's been trademarked. So there is some legal protection there particularly for practitioners who are installing the product.
Okay, sounds like you've got a busy few months, if not years ahead. When should a consumer campaign start to educate consumers about this change? You sort of touched on that.
Yeah, we're going to leave that till last because, as I said, we don't want to rush on product that isn't in the market, and we also don't want a whole lot of market being rejected when it's compliant product at the moment. So we expect not to be starting till 2025 with that. At the end of the day, by focusing on practitioners and the retailers and the regulators, when consumers go to purchase product or when they're talking with their designers or installers, they should be given the message about lead-free and the status at that time, and a discussion about the timing, I guess, of their project, when it's likely to be constructed and therefore what products they should be looking for. But we don't want to be out there, as it's been said, putting fear into the community at large about lead in plumbing products. You're probably aware there's been a few media outbreaks with certain supermarkets, taps being sold and things like that. So we don't want that because it'll be ill-informed, I guess, commentary out there. What we want is for licensed practitioners, for reputable retailers, for the regulators to be the ones giving this advice to the consumers at that transition time. And then we can focus on it once we've transitioned, because that's when the installers will only be installing lead-free product.
We need to get the media doing two sides of the story this time, don't we? Just not one. Yeah. Good luck with that. Anyone else? We're just about to wrap this up. Anyone else got a question? Yep. Well, come on down.
It's probably directed sort of, maybe Ernie, you might be able to answer this one, but as Ken said earlier and agrees, it's how are we going to test this And I understand that, you know, we've said that the council's going to go about their way by looking at some marks and things like that. But if we're going to be held to the standard that this is going to be a lead-free installation from a plumbing perspective, how am I going to reassure myself? What sort of testing equipment am I going to have to go and lodge paperwork for the council to prove that my side of the water main is actually lead-free and theirs isn't? There's a real contentious issue there because there's no... Where's the backup for how we're going to reassure that that is lead-free, as Ken said? Like, there's got to be a testing standard before we make this jump. There has to be some form of test that is available to prove the legitimacy of my side of the main as opposed to the retail.
Warwick, behind the watermark with the LF logo, there is an extensive testing regime. So all you have to do is look for the W and the LF, and you can be rest assured that that product has gone through an extensive testing regime to comply with the lead-free requirements in the NCC.
You don't look totally convinced, but okay, raising those eyebrows. What about, what is going to happen to the existing lead-free products? Like, are they going to be recyclable? What are you going to do with them? Or what are we going to do with them?
They'll be scrapped.
Right.
The existing product left in the market in May 2026, it'll be scrapped.
There could be a new business there for someone who's in, sculpturing or something. Does lead-free mean more expensive products for the end users? It's a question from the audience, from our delegates.
Possibly, but we're working hard not to to incur any price increases. We don't want to incur price increases in the supply chain. Early days, the manufacturers, as I said, were saying they can do this, but it's going to be at 20-30% premium. That premium's come down a lot as we get closer to the mark and as they get educated on how to use those different release agents and different alloys in the process. We don't want to incur additional increases, but we will. The price will go up, but hopefully marginally.
All right. So we're just about to wrap it up, but and I know you guys have. Thank you for being targets. They really have. Oh, one more question. Okay, hang on.
Just a quick one. Given that the scheme only applies to drinking water, couldn't all those old products be used on non-drinking water services?
Well, they can. They can. Sure.
So the message as to they all need to be scrapped probably isn't quite technically correct.
They need to be scrapped if they're falling in an installation where it needs to be watermarked. Then those products if there's no other use for them. Ernie mentioned an irrigation project. Yes, that could be used. But if it's an installation where the product needs to be watermarked and there's no other uses, the product will be scrapped.
Okay, and did we have another question down there? Oh, same question. Wow. Okay. Oh, now they're all coming out of the woodwork, see?
Look, it's Greg from Master Plumbers. New Zealand, I don't understand why we always put the liability on the contractors and the tradespeople. I understand in Queensland you've got to have point of sale, but why can't you have point of sale compliance across the whole country?
Australia is a federation of states. It has a different regulatory environment in each state and territory. I agree with it. I agree with your position. But getting the states to agree at times is like herding cats. It's not easy. It was challenging just getting the states to agree on this change, which was a mammoth change. Some state jurisdictions didn't want to give any transition at all. They wanted it to start literally immediately, which we said that industry said that is not feasible. But I think the momentum for point of sale is much better than it was, because in 2014 the board of the ABCB considered this issue and the states rejected it. But I believe the regulatory environment is changing and there is a much greater appetite recognising that it is not fair, that there is a loophole, that all of the responsibility is on practitioners.
Can I just add one other thing? Because New Zealand's going early, September 1, you talked about dumping of products. Well, I actually think it's potential to have in reverse, that the product from New Zealand will be sent here, because under CER you can't refuse to sell that, to import that product. And so I think you're at risk from September 1 to get a lot of product from New Zealand that you'll have to sell before May.
I think you'll find talking to the retailers, that by September 25, there'll be a lot of lead-free product in the system in Australia.
You guys have been very brave. Like, we've just been targeted, throwing things at you the whole time. So maybe we end on a positive note by one of each of you to say your thoughts and the positive side of what is happening in the industry. As it is, we know it's very, very disruptive. So just summing it up, I know, Anne-Maree, you've been answering a lot of questions, but we'll start with you.
Thanks, Lee. I have really been encouraged by the willingness of industry and regulators to work with us to get this done. So for me, that's a big tick, and I think it really shows that we can use this going forward for other changes.
Great. Ernie?
At the end of the day, it's not going to change a plumber's day-to-day life whatsoever. You're going to have the same products with the same threads, with the same fittings, the same fixtures. They're just going to have lower lead content.
Scott?
I think the opportunity for industry, certification bodies and the ABCB to work together on transition has been a really positive one. Industry advocated for this change. It's a very expensive change, and I'm proud of industry supporting this change, recognising that the expectations of the community changed following what happened in Perth and Geelong, and for industry to work together with our other key stakeholders to produce a transition timetable. I think that the round table since January 22 has met 37 times. At one stage, the round table was meeting on a weekly basis, and those meetings were often for 2 to 4 hours. So I think the outcome is really good. Is it a perfect outcome? No, it's not. I'm not going to get up here, sit up here today and say it's perfect. Is the change not going to be without problems? There will be problems. Anyone who thinks that this regulatory change happens, a change this size can happen without problems, they're kidding themselves. But we've achieved a really good outcome once the ABCB board made the decision, and I think we should be proud of the outcome.
Right, and finally, Tony, final words.
I struggle with the positive side of it. It is a shitstorm that we're in at the moment, and we're working hard to keep on top of it and making sure that we hit those timelines. So there's a lot of exposure that we have from a reseller perspective. There's a lot of product that we're going to have to dump. We're telling our members to dump product right now and be prepared for 2026. So it's positive from a consumer perspective, but from an industry perspective, where we sit right now, we're going through a lot of pain to get there.
Very well said. All right, would you please put your hands together for our fantastic panel, Anne-Maree, Ernie, Scott and Tony. Great job, guys. I think we